Welcome to today's Tuesday topic. Today's topic is CNHP PhD programs, homecoming, postdoctoral pathways. I have just dropped into the chat the Tuesday topics link just to give you a sense of some other things that are coming up soon while we're waiting for some folks' microphones to connect and get us oriented. I'm going to go ahead and just plug the next 2 or 3 Tuesday topics that are coming up. Next week, we have Meet the CNHP Board of Global Healthcare Engagement with Kate Clark and Jane Green Ryan. And then the week after that, we have Ethically Speaking, Vaccine Testing, Approval, and Distribution, which should be an interesting discussion about the Operation Warp Speed and the different vaccines that have been coming up in the ethics surrounding that. And then the week after that, we have Facilitating the Trap of Memorization, using active learning strategies to facilitate pathopsychology knowledge synthesis. So today our moderator is Dr. Roseanne DiMaria-Ghalili. And take it away, Roseanne.
Well, welcome everybody. This is a great Tuesday topic to see a lot of terrific familiar faces. Each year we do PhD program homecoming, and we have a terrific panel of former Drexel Dragons who will talk about their different postdoc pathways. With us today is Dr. May Cheung, who received her PhD in nutrition in this past year. Ari Millrod, who received her PhD in creative arts therapy back in 2019. Jerry John Nutor, who received his PhD in 2018. Gosh, that's so long ago. And Travis Pollen, also from Rehab Sciences, finished this past year. And Dr. Joseph Stanzione, who also finished this last year in nutrition sciences. So thank you really for spending the afternoon with us. And we have lots of other PhD students who are will soon be in your shoes in a couple of years, and some great faculty. So thanks for joining. And Darren, thanks for all your efforts. So why don't we turn it to the next slide? We asked our panelists to think about and reflect upon a series of questions. First topic was post-graduation reflections. What went according to plan and what didn't turn out as you expected? So I'm going to ask May to maybe kick us off with that. And everyone knows the order that they're in, so I could stay muted and you can all just pass the mic.
Hello, everyone. Well, my name is May, and thank you, Dr. DiMaria, for the introduction. And it's great to be back and see everybody. So thank you so much for inviting me today. What went according to plan, and so should I talk about what didn't go according to plan as well? So what went according to plan is that I am very grateful and fortunate to be able to get the postdoc that I really wanted. So right now what I have is called a NIH-funded T32 fellowship. So I'm really happy to be in this position right now. And I really like being at Monell, which is a nonprofit research institute focused on chemosensory research. So I'm really grateful to be in this institution. So that's what went according to plan. I also graduated, so that went well. What didn't go according to plan, I mean, is the pandemic. And as a human researcher myself, there are even though human research has resumed for us at Monell, there are a lot of limitations and change of research plans. So that's the part that didn't go according to plan. And I
think you muted yourself accidentally there, May.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I wasn't sure if I should like elaborate more or pass it on to maybe the next speaker. Okay, Darren, you also accidentally muted yourself.
So I'm next, right? So nice. My name is Ari. I got my PhD in creative arts therapies. It's really nice to see some familiar faces. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Palisano, who taught that scientific writing course. It was amazing. And even to see Darren, who helped me through my years through the PhD program. He was awesome. So it's really nice to be back. So to answer the questions, what went according to plan? So my primary transition has been to switch from being a clinician. So I'm a dance movement therapist who work with mental illness, addictions, and dual diagnosis, trauma, and grief. And I switched from being a clinician to an academic. I am a full-time tenure track position at Rider University in New Jersey. I launched a new graduate program in dance movement therapy as part of the CACRIP approved clinical mental health counseling program. So that was really amazing. The PhD program prepared me very well for it. I feel like I am putting every ounce of my knowledge that I gained in the PhD program to work as an educator, an artist, researcher, everything. For those who may not know, the university usually requires scholarship, service, what's the third one? All those things. It's everything I could hope to have gotten through the PhD. Although I didn't know that when I was going through the PhD, I'll be launching a new program, but it turned out that way. What didn't turn out as expected, kind of like what May was saying, was a pandemic. To be a freshman faculty, having to launch a brand new master's program and then having a pandemic hit was really rough. But I've been really grateful for the students who have inspired me. The students who continue to study in this pandemic are the ones who are truly motivated and wanting to make dance movement therapy their career and to learn the skills for counseling and creative arts therapy. So I guess the pandemic is the biggest curveball. Also, the amount of work I've been doing in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion has been tremendous. My identity as a Japanese Asian has never been so pronounced as it has been this past year. So I've been doing a lot of work around that. And then the other thing it's not that it didn't go as expected, but it was not expected, was my transition from clinical setting to academia. The culture of academia is so different from clinical. And prior to clinical, I did corporate. So I was like, well, I did corporate, I did clinical, I should be fine. Oh my gosh, academia is a whole different culture. So I've been on a real steep learning curve with that, with issues around shared governance, being a union member, the protections that they offer, and also the autonomy that it allows, but the whole difference in how you work with others has been really interesting. So I would say those are the main things that turned out differently from what I anticipated or didn't know that I should anticipate, put it that way. Okay, and that's it for me. So I'll pass it on to the next person.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Dr. D and Darren, for putting this together. And good to see you, Dr. Palisano. Yeah, so I don't think a lot of people on the call know me, but I graduated 2018. That is like so many years ago, just kidding. So when I finished, I don't know if there are some international students who are on this call. So there are so many, issues that international student has to be, need to be aware of, that because of immigration status and working permits and everything. So when I finished, I started, before I even finished, I started looking into a postdoc or a full faculty position or full-time faculty position. I started looking for that because that is what you need to be able to continue staying in the country. So before I started even thinking about defending my dissertation, I got into a postdoc at Drexel. So at Princeton, which I think really, really went well. Even though it was short, I was thinking I would spend 2 years there, but all things being well, I spent only a year there and I got a full-time faculty position at UCSF School of Nursing. I'm on a tenure track faculty or tenure track right now at UCSF School of Nursing. So I think generally the movement from the PhD program to a postdoc and to a faculty role really went well for me without any lapse in the middle where I will have a headache thinking about how to move things around, but that was kind of like smooth for me. So I think I didn't even plan it like I'll be in a faculty position right now. I was thinking, okay, 2 years in a postdoc, then I can be able to think about a faculty position. So generally speaking, I would say that really went well for me. Not to take much of the time so we can go into the next question. Now, what didn't work well? As expected, I was thinking, okay, I got some funding as well. I got about 3 different or 4 different internal funding to do my studies. So I'm continuing doing my studies, but as international personnel, or as somebody of who is not a citizen or permanent resident of this country, when you talk about K grant, there is only one that you are eligible for, and you can only get that when you are a postdoc, which is K99. The other K01, K23, and others, if you are not a permanent resident or a citizen, you are not going to get it. I didn't get to know that early. So I got into a full-time position now, and I can't actually apply for a K grant. And K grant, I think, are a really great thing because I'm already in a full-time position. I'm not able to apply for a K grant until my immigration papers are finished. So I think that is what I would say didn't go well, that I was expecting to have a K grant now. And if you know about K grant, you know that a junior faculty, that is, or a postdoc, that will be a very great opportunity for you. So that is what I would say didn't go well as I was expecting. So I'll move it on to Travis, right?
You've been busy, Jerry. Thanks to Darren and Dr. DiMaria-Ghalili for having me on. My trajectory thus far for like the last 8 months or so, I guess, has been a little bit different from the panelists who've spoken so far. I guess I'll start with what didn't go as expected. I applied for, I think, 4 faculty positions throughout the Philadelphia and surrounding suburb areas, and did not get any of them. Had a couple of interviews. One of them was like right when COVID hit and they got the application, and then I never heard anything from them again. So I assume only that they froze the hiring process and the job went away. I don't know, but I kind of treated that as a sign, I guess, that I would take a break from applying for those types of positions and go a more entrepreneurial route. So, and there were projects that I had been wanting to work on during my time throughout the PhD that I thought, okay, I'm gonna put on the back burner. Hopefully I have time to do them in the future. And realistically, if I had started a faculty position full-time, I wouldn't have been able to. So in the next question, I can tell more about those things that I'm doing. But one thing that did go well was that I adjuncted this past fall for Drexel. And so I've been able to keep the teaching trajectory alive a little bit so that if I do end up applying for these positions in the future, when the world returns to normal, hopefully they can see that continued, pattern of teaching and not just forgetting how to do that. So I guess Joe is next.
Thanks, Travis. Yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of background on where I'm at. I'm Joe Stanzione. I just graduated from the nutrition program in June. I am in Memphis, Tennessee. I work in a postdoc, but it's a very applied setting. I have a really unique kind of housing of my position. I work within the athletic department. I work for the School of Health Sciences. And I also work with the Human Performance Center, which is the applied scientists. What went to plan? I have a job, which is great. I know there's a lot of people who can't say the same, especially my 2020 fellow folks like May and Travis. We were applying to positions right before or around when the pandemic hit. So Travis, I have very similar situations where I applied to a lot of things, and they basically, most of them fell through. So what did go to plan is that I do have a job, which I'm very grateful for. And I know a lot of people can't say the same. What didn't go to plan is, this might be some knowledge for those of you who are eventually going to cross that bridge where you need to decide you need to move on, is I didn't really want to do a postdoc. I wasn't super interested in it, but I didn't close the door. Obviously, I love research, but I like to be kind of on the front line. So I was looking more towards like sports dietitians positions, areas where you could really work closely with athletes. But I applied to this postdoc because it was so applied. I work very closely with the athletes. I'm housed within the athletic department, and I get to see the everyday questions that need answering, and be able to develop projects kind of from the ground up. I know there'll be another question about like what your research is in, but I've gotten a lot of exposure to being able to identify where the need is and bring it to the lab, which is kind of interesting, especially in the world of nutrition, where the gap between the research and the questions that need to be answered are not always bridged. So what didn't go to plan is I am in a postdoc when I wasn't super interested in it, but I'm really glad I didn't close that door, because the housing of this one really kind of was built for my interest area. So those of you who are kind of on the fence about that, there's definitely some unique ones out there and some different ones, especially if you look for them.
So we're going to move on to the next question. So I think some of this you've already covered, but thinking about what job opportunities and research opportunities are you currently exploring after graduation? And no one really talked really specifically about their research interests, so maybe we could get on, have you address that now, what you're doing now.
So I think me first, right? All right. So what job opportunities and research opportunities I'm currently exploring? So I just started my fellowship. So my fellowship traditionally is 2 years on the T grant. And what is, I guess, the more traditional path for people with a T grant like me would be apply for F grant, F32. And afterwards, it will be what Jerry was saying, the K99 ROO path would be was not necessarily expected, but traditional. So that's something that I'm currently exploring right now. And in terms of research topic, right now I'm working on something called sensory nutrition. So it's to understand the interaction between taste and how you perceive a chemical stimuli and nutrition science. So our lab in particular has an interest in how your dietary sugar intake, which matches my nutrition science background. So how dietary sugar intake may change your perception of sweetness, and how you may choose food that are sweeter or not as sweet. And that's we're planning to explore that in a clinical trial setting. So, so scientifically, we know that if we reduce people's salt intake over time, people would need less salt to perceive the same level of saltiness. And people tend to like food that's less salty, but they don't know that about sweet foods. So that's what I'm interested in right now. Yeah, so that's my babble. I'll pass it on to the next speaker.
Hi, so that's me. So job opportunities and research opportunities. So I finished my degree in September of 2019 and then went straight into teaching. So I've been kind of running nonstop, and it's only now that I'm looking into doing research, and I'm looking into grants within the university. So the university offers grants to junior faculty. So I'm looking into that, and I'm also looking to do collaborations with students. So that's another aspect of being full-time faculty, is that you have to try to involve students who want to learn research to do it with you. So I'm looking into grants and funded way so I can pay the students, because I know money is very important for students to survive these days as graduate students. That's where I'm doing it. And in terms of job opportunities, I think the only thing is I do miss my clinical work. And I've committed to not doing clinical work for at least 3 years while I launch this program, but I'm kind of itching. So I'm starting to look into ways to create outreach programs to the university, to the surrounding communities. So that'll be ways for me to do a clinical, perhaps for free or pro bono, whatever you want to call it, and also help the university with its mission to serve its surrounding community. So that's what I'm kind of playing around with right now. Okay, Jerry.
Right. Thank you. Like I already mentioned, because I'm in a full-time tenure track position, I am really just focusing on my research and other things I need to be able to be promoted now. I would say that I now completely understand my supervisor and my committee members during my dissertation time after taking a tenure track position, because the demand is not easy, especially if you started as assistant professor in a tenure track position. So I really understand a lot of things better than I used to understand them. So in terms of research, I am now looking at, I'm still kind of continuing the project that I started in my dissertation in my PhD program. I'm looking at HIV treatment and adherence among pregnant and new mothers who are HIV positive, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. I did my dissertation in Zambia, and now I got some two internal grants where I'm actually doing a similar study in Uganda, and also turning in another R21 in for same project, or to start thinking about intervention, how to actually improve adherence and retention in HIV care among pregnant women and new mothers in sub-Saharan Africa, and also to reduce stigma and discrimination and things like that. That actually gets on the way of treatment. So and also one interesting thing in that one of the tenure track position is also you are given some kind of startup fund that you use to start your research. So I'm actually using that now to expand a whole lot of things that I'm doing, and also to get more training, because somebody says that what we do as assistant professors is that we spend all the time reading the books and learning the things that we did not learn when we were in the PhD program. So so I'm still I still take some classes that I feel like will help me enhance or improve upon my research, because if, as you may know, UCSF is actually graduate kind of school. So, and then they have residencies and postdocs. So they offer these kind of advanced research courses for junior faculty and residents and postdocs. So I'm taking some of these classes also to sharpen my my skills set in some of the research areas that I want to delve into. And so basically, and also looking at other grant opportunities that are outside, like I mentioned, you may understand you don't want to also lose your early investigator status. So you're also very careful of the grants you want to apply to not be able to lose that status, so that other opportunities that might be there for a junior faculty, you can take advantage of them. So I'm actually also trying to play those cards and make sure that I go through that. And beside this, I do this, and I talk about it wherever I am. I do also conference in Africa where I look at, I kind of encourage sharing research. I call it Africa Interdisciplinary Health Conference. It's a side thing that I do, and I enjoy doing it. We are organizing another one right now. It's going to be hopefully in Rwanda if the pandemic is a little bit under control. So these are the things that I'm currently doing. So Travis, over to you.
Man, oh man. So as I mentioned earlier, I adjuncted at Drexel in the fall, and I'm planning to continue to look for more adjunct positions in the coming terms and years. at the very least, if not applying for more full-time faculty. But in the short term, I'm doing more entrepreneurial type stuff. So I'm working on a couple of collaborative e-products, so internet products with one of which is a company that I co-founded. It's an athletic performance company. And I started working on it in the last couple of years of my PhD. And of course, now that I have more time on my hands, I've been able to devote more of my energy to that. And with that company, the athletic performance company, we are a few months away from launching an app for return to play training for people who are recovering from ACL injuries. So that is similar to some of the work that I did for my preliminary work for my dissertation. So that's kind of been a nice continued area of research or area of interest that I've continued beyond my PhD. And that could dovetail into some actual research looking at compliance rates with the training program that our app contains, as well as re-injury outcomes. So that was one thing that I'm working on. And then the other thing that I'm working on is an e-product on strength training that I'm targeting at a yoga audience. I have a collaborator who's a yoga teacher. And so we're actually a few weeks away from launching that as an ebook. So despite not having the more traditional, faculty and postdoc things that other people have been mentioning, I have been keeping myself busy in other ways. Joe.
Yeah, so kind of getting lost in the question here a little bit. What job opportunities was the route we're going down here? Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm very much in applied sports science. So areas that I'm looking into are academic positions, especially those who are heavy in exercise science or have relationships with their athletic departments. Really anyone who values bringing the information from the papers into the field and seeing how they can best get the best performance out of their athletes. But also sports organizations, a lot of them do value that as well. So like I said, I'm very much in the realm of applied science, but with some research initiatives as well. But I mean, research that I have been currently exploring, there's been the gamut of things. I've really kind of stepped away from, not purposefully, but out of a product of necessity from my dissertation work. So for instance, my dissertation work was substrate use during exercise. So what fuels are being used, and now we're doing ion interventions with our cross-country runners, which is much different. Analyzing cramping issues in sports participating in outdoor activities, football, soccer, things like that, and how we can best combat those issues through nutrition. And then all the way to things such as like perception of foods and what wards off flavor fatigue and recovery drinks and things like that for the athletes, and how they how we can best supply them with really foods to retain their interest in it, as opposed to traditional approaches to that. So really kind of all over the place, but much different from my dissertation work. But yeah, those are areas where I put a lot of my focus into right now.
So I think we already have some questions, and I know I have some. I'm going to maybe pause and ask some of these questions. I think Bonnie had a question to everyone, two parts. When did you really start thinking of, those of you who took postdocs, when did you start thinking of applying for a postdoc during your doctoral work? And how much for international students, Jerry, this might be your question, how long does it really take for a transition? So why don't we could open up with those of you that are on postdocs or took postdocs. When did you start thinking about it?
I always wanted to do a postdoc because I just like learning and I like research. I just want to keep learning. I think I seriously started like working towards talking to PIs maybe a year before I graduated, and then I really doubled down, I want to say 6 months before my graduation date. So I think I applied to a job in Monell in November, yeah, before Thanksgiving, and then I took months to hear back. You know, like you just gotta keep follow up. So I follow up, and I heard back and got my interview in April. So like right before I graduated. So that's the timeline. But then like leading up to it, I was definitely talking to people way before that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
what about you?
Yes. So I also started thinking about this immediately. I collected my data. I started analysis and writing because I realized that, like I mentioned earlier on, anything, I will need a postdoc, or I need a faculty position to continue working here or living here. So I started actually, after I started analyzing my data and started writing, I started for looking. I started looking immediately after that, started talking to people. Unfortunately, now conferences are virtual. So I went to conferences, I talked to people after presentation. I'm like, do you have a postdoc position? Do you have a faculty position? I did all that. So basically, I think the looking for me started 1 year, and immediately I kind of like finished my full draft, and about finishing my full draft of the dissertation, I started actually, I've already submitted an application already. One thing that I did was I was applying for both postdocs and full-time faculty position at the same time. I think Dr. Palesano had to read through some of my letters for me when I was writing the letters. So I was applying for all at the same time. I wasn't like separating myself, like separating postdoc from a full-time faculty position. So what happened was I got 2 postdocs at the same time, and I had to actually drop one. So so basically you should start applying before you even get to the final draft, because it takes a long time for the committee to get back, and the back and forth that happens. So that's what I did. For international student, the transition, by the time you are finishing, the International Student Office is going to reach out to you that you should start applying for the OPT, which you might be aware of already. And the OPT, once you submit your dissertation, and the last day of the term, you have 30 days to start, 60 days to start the OPT. You can start on the 59th day, that is still fine. So you have to, so around that time for international student, I always say you are going to be working with your committee, the International Student Office, and the graduate college, all of the 3 together, whilst you are also maybe having some kind of leadway into getting into a postdoc or full-time faculty position, because all these 3 things have to work together, because you also have to be applying to the UCIS for your OPT and everything. So basically give yourself enough time. And I know some people hold on to their defense and graduation if the way is not clear for them. They still hold on to it. And I remember I advised some people not from drugs to hold on to it, because that is going to actually affect you may have to go out. So give yourself enough time and talk to the International Student Office, and they are also very good at giving advice regarding this.
Yeah, similar to Jerry, it wasn't specific to postdoc, but I did start applying to a bunch of positions earlier. I'd say that as soon as I had a clear indication of when my graduation date would be, I think that was it was kind of hard to see when that would be, especially when recruitment and things like that. You have no idea when you're going to meet your allotted amount of participants. But by January, I knew that it was likely going to be at the end of the year. And so that's when I started applying, but I probably started just looking to see what was out there a year out, just kind of seeing what was popping up here and there. So doing some of that work ahead of time, but submitting applications, I think it was January, and I graduated in June.
Joe, another question for Joe from Laura Bear. What are the completion requirements of your postdoc, and how long is your contract? And what are some of the applied areas you might consider moving into after this position?
Completion requirements. So obviously publications are there, but to be quite honest, my contract is to support the needs of the athletic department and the research initiatives of the college. So as long as I'm doing that, I'm on track. But I don't think if I hit the finish line and I don't have 7 publications that I'm not going to move on from the postdoc. So I don't think that there's any hard, numbers out there that I need to meet in terms of requirements. But yeah, just as long as both of those boxes are ticked. My contract it's a 2-year postdoc. They're 1-year contracts, so it gets renewed every year. I'm not sure if that's unique to the college here or elsewhere. That might be the case as well, but I'll be here for 2 years, but it's like you renew the contract every year. Applied areas, so anywhere that values data and how it can be brought to the field. So that's not going to be everywhere. Really, that's going to be more in your professional sports organizations who want to kind of be on the front end of the science and developing new ways to do things and ways to get their athletes ahead of the game. But a lot of times those are in either athletic departments or the other side of the coin, the academic departments, where there's like this collaboration between the research and the student athletes, or the exercisers, if you will. So really, what I'm looking into is areas that value sports science, want to build the body of information beyond what's already available. So I don't know if that's quite the targeted answer you're looking for, but it is a little bit broad in who values that. You might find that different institutions, although they are comparable to each other, may not, and the other might really value it. So, I mean, here at Memphis, we have, as our department is the Department of Health Sciences, but there's a division of it called the Human Performance Center that strictly is there for sports science. They have a couple biomechanists, a skill acquisitions specialist, and myself, who heads up the nutrition portion now, that are all looking to, again, build the body of information when we have our population right here in athletics. So that's kind of that bridging that gap a little bit, which is where I'm looking for. But again, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So yeah.
So Darren's giving me a reminder. We have like COVID questions as well to answer, but I do want to just circle back a moment, if you don't mind, to Eri and to Jerry, because you both talked about tenure track positions, right? And so Eri, is research a very important component of your tenure track position? Because every university is different in some regards. Some are more teaching focused for tenure and some are more research focused. So Jerry's at UCSF, which I'm sure research is a big portion of going up for tenure and promotion. What is it like for you, Eri?
So Rider University is technically a teaching university as opposed to, let's say, research university, but there are 3 categories that I have to fulfill. One is obviously teaching, and then the other is scholarship, which includes research. And then the other is service to the university or to the community. And so, yeah, research is required for promotion and tenure. What I'm told is that typically if you publish, so you enter as an assistant professor, then you go to assistant 2 and then to associate. And then at that time, you either get tenured or you don't. And the way I've been told is that if you publish at least 1 article or peer review article or something per year, i.e. minimum 6 by the time you go up for promotion to associate and to tenure, then you should be okay. And then ideally, those would come from your research. So it's not like a research industry, but encouraged or required or built into the structure.
Yes, thank you, Dr. DiMaria, for that question. I think tenure track, one of the things you have to look for it when you're applying for faculty position is also what is the requirement for research and teaching and what you like. For UCSF, as you may be aware, is a very research intensive institution, and you are required minimum publication. Research is required. They say 50%, it's like 50-50, but I say it's 100%, 100%. That's how I kind of like think about it, because it's almost 100% teaching, 100% research. You are expected at least 2 papers, ideally is 3 papers publication every year. And if you go, then if you can, then at least 2, and that might actually prolong the time of tenure. And then also you have to bring in external grants, not necessarily NIH, but a foundation grant is okay, or external, any kind of external grant that you can be able to bring. So for the first, second year, for the first 2 years, they are actually just trying to see if you can get some internal grant, because there are a lot of packets of money for internal grant opportunities. So you are expected to write for and then be this competitive internal grant and be able to fund some of your projects. So you are required to get that. Then after that, you go to the next step, and then you get appraisal. Between the appraisal and then the tenure, it's for you to get to associate a professor with tenure, you should be at least bringing some kind of external grant, research fund into the institution. So that is required. Beside your other things like service to the university, to the community, and at large, all these things are required. But publication and grant money, highly required.
Yes, yes, yes. What we've all been preaching, right? Now you're on the other side of that, and you get to experience what that's like, right? So I know we have some other questions, but I want to just circle around a bit to Travis a minute, if you don't mind, because Travis is spending some time in the entrepreneurial world, right? And Philadelphia is a great city for that, with all the great startups that are going on, and the minefield in University City with the University City Science Center. So are you familiar with like what goes on at University City Science Center and all the startup talks that they do there to connect with other entrepreneurs? And are you familiar with the unique funding opportunities you can apply for as on the industry side, the STTRs and the SBIR grants? Because the NIH does have a certain pocket of funding for small businesses, right? To continue the innovation.
So that is news to me. So you might be able to better elaborate on those things, and I'll take notes.
So yeah, so I want you to, and so I'll make sure I'll send you an email and connect you with the University City Science Center as well, because they do have a digital health accelerator that they're always looking for. They have competitions there, seed money for startup companies. So you're in a great opportunity that people who want to develop, you're nimble right now, right? Because you have these ideas for e-health technology, and you're not wedded to a faculty position where you have to teach a class or prepare somebody for their dissertation. So you could really spend a lot of time and really work on the entrepreneurial aspects. And the NIH recognizes the importance of innovation for folks that are in positions like you're in. And they have what they call the STTR, the Small Business Technology Transfer Grant. So for an SBIR, the PI has to be part of the company, and the grant can go straight to the company. So it's a phase 1 and a phase 2. phase one is a small amount of money, maybe 150,000 to demonstrate proof of concept. And then you can go on for a phase two, which could be, up to $1 million or so. Sttr grants are very similar. There has to be a company involved, but the PI somebody on that team has to be affiliated with the institution, with an academic institution. So for instance, when I was working on my Smart Cup, we had STTR funding. I was the PI because I was able to be a PI as a faculty member on, it's supposed to be a marriage between a company and the university. So there's a lot, that's going on there. And we actually, one of my colleagues in biomedical engineering was left a tenure track faculty position to go and really be full-time for a company in University City in Monell. They're situated in Monell because they got a huge CDC SBIR grant, a couple of $1 million. So, this happens all the time. So you're on a path that is really unique, but it's not unheard of, especially in engineering. In nursing and health professions, you don't always hear of that, but it's really an exciting path. I don't know, Bob, do you want to chime in?
No, I don't think I have a whole lot to add to that. I do know some colleagues who've gotten that along the lines in rehab in measurement development. This goes back a few years when they had some innovative measure and they had gotten that funding.
Travis, I'll send you that. And the other piece that I don't know if any of you have thought about is, one untapped area as well as the military and the VA system. So Joe, when you were talking a lot about performance medicine, and so I see a lot of application to the military, and I've only know folks that that work for the VA and different systems and do a lot of military funding, and there's a lot of interest in that area. So have you thought about that, or trying to get funding in that area?
No, I haven't, to be quite honest. Being in the role that I'm in, it's like having a lot of hands in different fields. I'm in athletics, serving as like almost a sports nutritionist, but also spearheading some of the initiatives. But no, that's interesting. It's definitely something you should look into.
Do you have anything words of wisdom? Any words of wisdom?
Was that to me? Oh, okay. I'm so sorry, because I was like, you cut out for a second. No. I was just going to say that I couldn't agree more. You were right on target with the VA. The VA has phenomenal funding, and almost more. The pay line, the number of people who get grants with the VA is so much better. You're more likely to get a really large grant from the VA than you are from NIH, and the VA pays just as much of the indirects and covers your salaries and gives you all the support, if not more. And they have got some really novel, like 1-year grants, just a proof of concept. So Travis, you might even think of, proof of concept on some of your types of ideas that might be a perfect marriage for you. So there are additional areas there too. So thank you, Roseanne.
Any other question? It could be an open mic. We have like 12 minutes left.
Yeah, I think there is a question.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yes.
Bonnie's follow-up question. For tenure, does the university specify the number of courses you have to teach? Is that negotiable?
Yeah, I think these vary from university to university. For us, you are required to teach. We also run the quota system, and you are required to teach 3 classes in addition every year, in addition to all the research and other things. And there are, if you come to the UC system, there are different parts of faculty position, like which actually also in other universities where there are some teaching faculty tenure track, they have adjunct, they have professor or faculty in residence position or HS clinical, all those ones. But for tenure track specifically, in the School of Nursing, you are required to teach 3 classes every year and then in addition to your research. And all these will actually be included in the letter, in your offer letter. But also for UCSF, one thing that they do when you come the first, second year, you don't take the full, because they're expecting you to get grounded in your research. They do not actually require you to take the full teaching load from the beginning. They give you some kind of protected time to be able to get your research grounded whilst you are you teach your first, second class, maybe in as a co-instructor or co-faculty of record with somebody who already is in the system and knows everything. So those are structures put in place for UCSF, but I know this varies from university to university. So yeah.
Yeah, for non-research universities or teaching university like mine, you don't get that kind gentle. It's like you get a full load, which is basically 18 semester credits per academic year. And it's not negotiable in that that's required. So you can teach, let's say 10 one semester and 7, but in the end you have to end up, but on average it averages out to 3 per semester. And then if your class is under enrolled, then they pay you a portion prorated rate for that. And then that would be quote your 4th class. And then if you do any summer or J term things, that's extra pay. The only way that you'll be released from that is if you have other responsibilities like directing a program or being a liaison to certain institutions that are affiliated to the university, things like that. But yeah, there's basically 18 credits required per academic year.
I have a question for Erin Millrod. I was wondering, for a non-research university, you said that you are still required to do publish one article per year. And I was wondering, like, does the university provide you with lab or other opportunities for you to do research? Like how do you do research if it's not a research university?
So that's a very good question. So I'm actually signed up for a workshop this week on how the university is going to help me find grant money. They have a list of foundations that offer grants based on what our research topic is. And they will guide you through that process. You don't get release time for that. So you don't get excused from teaching those course sources that you're required in order to do the research. So that's the difference between research university and teaching university. I have this unique situation where, because I'm a dance movement therapist, I sit in the theater and dance department, but I teach in the clinical counseling department. So I have this odd situation where my promotion criteria sits in a School of Fine and Performing Arts, but I teach in a College of Education and Human Services. So what I'm basically doing is doing what makes sense for me, because I'm the first creative arts therapist that they have there. So I'm not going to be producing a dance concert, So I want to do research. So I'm going to be doing research instead of, let's say, doing production. So instead of doing production annually, I do a research and then I'll publish articles coming from that, things like that. So it takes a lot of initiative. The summer and this winter break is a huge time to work on publications. I worked on 2 manuscripts this winter break, so you don't get a break, so that's how it gets done. And they try to fund you, and there's fellowships and things like that that faculty can apply for through the university, so you don't spend your whole summer working without money.
So just wanted to clarify that manuscript, was it research manuscript? So it has to be a research paper, or can it be any manuscript?
It could be anything, really. The one thing you should know is that if you take Dr. Polisano's class, you have the option to learn how to write, your proposal, your dissertation proposal, as either a traditional dissertation or an article. I did the article option. So when I graduated from the PhD program, I had 2 articles ready to go. Awesome. So I've been slowly working on those, and I submitted one, and then I'm working on the second one as we speak.
I think that's terrific. And I remember way back in the day when I was in my doctoral program, my dissertation chair said, doing research is like baking a cake. You take out as many ingredients as you want, and then freeze the rest that you aren't going to use. So as all of you are still enrolled, if you start thinking about your research questions for your dissertation, always think about, adding a little bit extra data, even if you don't analyze that for your dissertation, but you can use that for, that first faculty position and do secondary analysis of your own data. So something to think about. Set yourself.
Yeah, I must say that that was like the gift from Drexel.
I'm currently working on a paper from secondary analysis from my dissertation.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the publication, I also want to clarify, even though, sometime in a year, you can get only one publication, then the following year you get 4, 5. That is still fine. So that is understandable sometime that some year you are not that very productive. Maybe reviewers were not just kind to you. And then the following year you get a lot of publication, and that's kind of like match up everything and you are fine. So and also the number first, second, or top most basically what they want for a junior person. And then if you are getting up there, then then you are required to get also a senior author on some of the people. That's the last author. So yeah.
Out of time. Any last burning questions from our panelists? Any last closing words of wisdom?
One thing that I didn't realize, and I don't know if anybody else had this experience, but there were job applications or job postings that I applied for. And so echoing what other people said, apply early, apply early, apply early. Well, I saw some and I saw that the deadline for application was whatever it was. And I saw it was a month away and I said, oh, I'll wait because I'm busy right now and I'll wait till the deadline. And I came to find out that they had, by the time I had applied, like the day before the deadline, they had hired for that position. I had no idea that these application processes were rolling. And so I, if I knew that now, or, I will know in the future, as soon as I see something, I need to apply for that, because it's not the case that they're waiting until they get all the applications to look at the applications and start bringing people in. And that wasn't obvious to me. Maybe other people knew that, but I didn't. So thought I would pass that on.
Also, the application season is like the fall. So me to start in, when did I start? Fall 2019. I was interviewing in 2018. So it's 1 year ahead. So there's a cycle. So just to be aware of that.
And I don't know about anybody else, but so you want to be applying a year ahead, but then you often, or occasionally, or at least I did, ran into situations where they didn't want people who were ABD all but dissertation. And I have not figured out, well, now that's not an issue for me, but I don't understand how you remedy that situation. Oh, you have to apply early, but sometimes they don't want people because I guess they can't know for sure that you're going to finish when you say you're going to finish.
Yeah, maybe I'll say my last one. It's something I think when applying for a position, please have as many as people to review your write-up for you. It's not an issue at all. Like as many as people, and even the interview questions, even for a postdoc, because sometimes they ask so many things, and you are writing for so many positions. So it's like you can miss things, like you can mess some of the things up. So if other people read it for you, like what I was doing, because I applied for 2 postdocs, the people who read the one for the first one, I didn't let them read it for the second one, because they were asking for different things. And it might actually, like me myself writing it, I'm kind of like maybe like missing up the idea. So when different people read it, they're able to catch, oh, this one was asking for this, but you didn't add it. So you can go back and then revise it. So ask as much as question and read about the institution and know everything that you can. And there is nothing too small to put on your CV, and there is nothing too big to put on your CV. Maybe that small thing going to put on a CV that is going to spark an interesting conversation that is going to make somebody like you, and then you're going to get a position. So talk to as many people as possible and ask questions as well. I kept asking people who went through the process, what are some of the questions I could ask? And then I was able to have my own draft of questions that I asked myself and got ready. So, yeah.
I see folks are continuing on in the chat room. Thank you. Any final questions? Darren, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. I can keep I have another meeting I have to run to, so I can't keep this meeting going for forever, but I could probably hang out for another 5 minutes or so. And panelists, are you okay with sharing your contact information with the folks here on the, I see nodding heads.
Yep.
Fantastic. So expect from me in a short while an email, which thanks you for coming, has a brief survey and contact information for the panelists so you can continue your conversations. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week at Tuesday Topics.